Barakatah Yahweh, Barakatah Yahweh Bahasham, Barakahak Barakatum. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, glory, and infinite honors to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone who ruled and teach well. In peace and salutations to you sincere Akim out there, pushing this word in truth and sincerity to the four corners of the globe. May you brothers endure until the end. This is the brother Ra'aya coming at you with another lesson. I'm going to start it off with an article from LAilluminator.com titled Landry, who's Louisiana's governor, pledges Louisiana National Guard troops for Trump's D.C. takeover. So, hey, a couple of weeks ago with Trump instituting the National Guard as a police force in D.C., now you've got many different governors from many different states pledging to send, some of their National Guard up there to help in the effort. And, as ICE has been geared towards you Northern Kingdom of the 12 tribes of Israel, which the Northern Kingdom consists of you so-called Latinos and Native Americans, all this talk of policing these crime-ridden states, hey, that's directed towards the Southern Kingdom, you so-called black, African-American, Negroes, etc., because this devil, Esau Edom, the so-called white man, is about to come down in great wrath, as it says in Revelation 12, verse 12, because he knoweth that he hath but a short time to fulfill his NWO, his great RESET, and that involves slaughtering as many of you Israelites as he can. And also on top of that, we are quickly coming into the times of Jacob's trouble, where Yahweh Bahasham Yahweh, who is ultimately in control of everything, is getting ready to judge, 2/3 of you Israelites in America for your rebellious, wicked nature. But the article reads, Governor Jeff Landry has approved sending 135 members of the Louisiana National Guard to Washington, D.C. in support of President Donald Trump's takeover of the city's police department. More than 1,000 National Guard soldiers from multiple states have been directed to the nation's capital since Trump declared a crime emergency there, despite its violent crime rate reaching a 30-year low. And, Washington, D.C., I can't think of the exact number off the top of my head, has a relatively, small population, and 1,000 National Guard troops on top of, the police force there. And I believe they've got ICE agents up there as well. Hey, that's a pretty sizable force. But as it's about to say, we are the nation of law and order. Our capital is a reflection of our nation's respect, beauty, and standards, Landry wrote Monday in a social media post. And that statement where he says, we are a nation of law and order, is what I want to hearken in on, because that's how this devil is going to justify himself in coming against you Israelites. You're the problem, your crimes, your thugs, your criminals, your thugs, your illegal immigrants. You come from fatherless homes. And what? We need to bring this country back from the brink because of so-called leftist, liberal policies that just give a slap on the wrist to criminals. This is Wisdom of Solomon, chapter 2, verse 11. And this whole chapter is dedicated to the mindset of these Edomites, the wicked. So if you want to get a insight into how these Edomites think and tick, read this whole chapter. But verse 2 and 11 says, let our strength be the law of justice. Again, we are a nation of law and order. Esau justifies his oppression and his wickedness through his legal means. He puts it on the books, sometimes years before he actually enacts his plan. Then he creates the situation to necessitate those laws being used to fulfill his bigger agenda. Let our strength be the law of justice, for that which is feeble is found to be nothing worth. We cannot allow our cities to be overcome by violence, and lawlessness. And, it said, for that which is found to be feeble is nothing worth. Again, because, Republicans and Democrats are both controlled by the elites just to play their different, parts and, the bigger agenda. But what do you always hear them say? Look, these liberal, leftist, democratic policies, these blue states and blue cities with their blue mayors, usually a so-called black woman. Look, they're feeble, they're not tough on crime, and actually they incentivize the criminals instead of the citizens, which, in a lot of cases, that is the case. But again, it's all by design. So what? We have to bring in the law and order to bring back peace and stability. I am proud to support this mission to return safety and sanity to Washington, D.C. and cities all across our country, including right here in Louisiana. And back during the Super Bowl and around the time of Mardi Gras, Landry instituted something called Troop NOLA, where you had a bunch of, state police and, different law enforcement down here in the city cleaning up crime just to make it safe for the Super Bowl and Mardi Gras, which just goes to show you how much, they don't give a shit about the citizens, especially you Israelites. It's all about making those shekels. But regardless, there was something called Troop NOLA down here, where you had a lot of law enforcement getting these YNs and policing things. And then, our elder brother down here was also talking about how Trump's doing it up in D.C. with using the police as National Guard. He wants to bring down something similar here as well, transition from Troop NOLA to that. So we'll just have to wait and see. But the governor did not indicate how long Louisiana's Guard members will be deployed. The part-time soldiers typically hold separate full-time jobs they must leave behind when on assignment. In addition to Louisiana, Mississippi Governor Tate Reeves will send 200 of his National Guard members to Washington. Ohio Governor Mike DeWine will send 150 members of his state's National Guard. South Carolina Governor Henry McMaster approved 200 members, and West Virginia Governor Patrick Morrisey will send up to 400 National Guard members. Again, a pretty sizable force to combat crime. In addition to deploying the National Guard to Washington, Trump has leaned on the district's Home Rule Act to have the 3,400-person Metropolitan Police Force assist in immigration enforcement. Trump's emergency order expires in about 3 weeks, but he has said he intends to extend it and ask Congress to pay for the effort. But now I'm going to go to my second article from WAPT.com. Mississippi National Guard members deployed to Washington, D.C. for crime crackdown efforts. Members of the Mississippi National Guard have been deployed to Washington, D.C. to assist in President Donald Trump's efforts to crack down on crime in the city. Governor Tate Reeves said approximately 200 Mississippi National Guard soldiers have been deployed to Washington, D.C. Reeves said in a statement, "I've approved the deployment of approximately 200 Mississippi National Guard soldiers to Washington, D.C. to support President Trump's effort to return law and order. Let our strength be the law of justice to our nation's capital. Crime is out of control here, and it's clear something must be done to combat it. America deserves a safe capital city that we can all be proud of. I know the brave men and women of our National Guard will do an excellent job enhancing public safety and supporting law enforcement." ABC News reports Guard members from West Virginia have responded. Ohio and South Carolina have also offered to send troops. The numbers of soldiers responding is expected to reach more than 1,100 in the coming days. So hey, things are ramping up exponentially, and the main target is going to be you Israelites. Like I said at the beginning of the video, ICE is targeting the Northern Kingdom, while this fight on crime with National Guard troops which are, military capable forces, is going to be targeted at you, Southern Kingdom. Which brings me to my next article from FoxNews.com. Black fatherlessness is turning DC into a war zone. Fatherless boys increasingly fuel DC violence as gang replaces families, as we see. They send a National Guard to combat, violence and gang problems. But look at who the face of it is. Black fatherlessness and YNs. As a part-time DC resident and a young so-called black man living in America, I'm not here to play nice. The time for that is long past. And, they got a Jake, to write the article. Washington, D.C. is spiraling out of control, and it's not just because of bad mayors, weak prosecutors, and woke policies, which all have a part to play in it. Like I said, these Republicans and Democrats are just two wings on that same bird, which the elites run, and their agenda is to create chaos to bring about that order and use you Israelites as the main target and to take out as many of you Israelites as they can. It's because too many fathers in the black community have walked away from their responsibilities, and too many people in power are too cowardly to say it out loud. And while that is the case in a lot of instances, single parent households in the so-called black community, it didn't just spring up out of nowhere. Who set up the welfare state? Who set up feminism to put out that strong black woman, I don't need no man spirit, to where in order for these women to receive those benefits, the man had to be out of the house? And hey, lest we forget who is raising these YNs out here, the so-called black woman, which, with how she's been running a terror for the last, several decades, she's well on her way to winning worst mother in the history of mankind reward. So-called black woman. Not all of them, of course, because you do have maybe, a 5 or 10. I'm joking, but you do have some good so-called black women out there. But for the majority of you, you're about as deadly as a nuclear weapon. But and then too, you do have a bunch of ain't shit Israelite men out here who don't take care of their children. But at the same time, you do have a lot of men that do try to take care of their children. But the way the system's been set up, the man is demonized and kicked out. But, regardless, you can't just put all this on, the so-called black man being the root cause. Again, who to set up the policies and infrastructure in place to make it easy to create these single-parent households? Everybody is to get the blame here. And you Israelites will get judged during Jacob's trouble. And hey, you Edomites, you so-called white people, aren't off the hook. But again, if you want to know why our nation's capital has become one of the most dangerous cities in America, start in the home. The reality is simple. When boys grow up without fathers, the streets raise them. And the streets are predictably doing a terrible job. And who pushes out, rap and thug and hip-hop culture out there? Who owns these record labels that push that music and these artists? Edomites, specifically you Amalekite Edomites, you small hats. And if you really gave a damn about so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans, you would ban that music. You would do everything you could to not push that influence out there. But that's big business, so they can't lose the shekels. Neither can they lose the shekels from what? The prison industrial complex, which who fills up the majority of these households? The tribes. And what is an easy way to do that prison, what does they call it? That school to prison pipeline? Create single parent households. Have the streets raise these children, which you've got rap and thug and hip hop culture promoted as what it means to be a so-called hard nigga or a so-called real black man. Then what? Everything takes care of itself. This isn't conjecture, it's fact. According to the American experiment, which, so-called black culture and you niggas today, hey, you're the ultimate American experiment. A child without a father is 5 times more likely to commit crime and be poor, 9 times more likely to drop out of school, and 20 times more likely to end up in jail. In neighborhoods across D.C., gangs have replaced families, drug dealers have replaced fathers, violence has replaced manhood, and yet we act surprised when carjackings, shootings, and murders spiral out of control. Spare me. This didn't happen by accident. It's the predictable outcome of a culture that stopped valuing family and started excusing failure. And, with this article, I got it from a lesson that Elder Yashuwamba of the Dallas camp did. So, this video is a little bit of a laying back off of that. But, as he made a bunch of beautiful points in that lesson, who has been telling you the importance of the family structure and that black culture isn't shit? The Israelites. But, as always, you Israelites don't want to take heed to the words of the prophets. So now Yahweh Bahashem Yahweh Shah is going to have to come down with that hammer on you. And as it says in Psalm 17, verse 13, he's going to use the wicked, Esau, Edom, who is his sword to do so. But that's all I'm going to read in this article. But, with the first 2 articles, it was talking about National Guard being sent to D.C. from several states to combat crime. And in this article, it's saying one of the root causes for this influx of crime in D.C. is what? Black fatherlessness and, so-called young black men, these YNs. So let our strength be the law of justice and taking out you niggas, you spics, and you tontos. But now let's get back to these precepts. This is Psalms 94. I'm going to start at 20. Shall the throne of iniquity have fellowship with thee, which frameth mischief by a law? And this is all just a bunch of mischief we're seeing. Esau, through the decades, has created the conditions to what? Justify him bringing in that order, that law, and that justice. Not just with police, but now National Guard, military-capable troops to handle business on you Israelites. And it's just starting off with National Guard troops right now. It's going to steadily escalate to actual military. And hey, at some point, there's going to be foreign troops on the streets of America running roughshod on you Israelites, as well as, you other American citizens as well. Because civil unrest, martial law, and great rebellion is coming to the streets of America. Verse 21, they gather themselves together against the soul of the righteous and condemn the innocent blood. And while 2/3 of our people aren't innocent, the men of the Lord, the prophets, are going to get numbered amongst the transgressors. Because as Elder Yashuwamba brought up, you've got a lot of Israelites in these other camps, Sakari and ISUPK come to mind that still want to, cling on to that image of black culture and mix it with the truth. Sakari, Guerrilla Hebrew, what did he say a lot? He's a Hoover Crip, which is just a terrible image. You're a leader of a so-called Israelite group, but at the same time, you're a part-time Crip. And that's why the Lord's, breaking you down with those spiritual body shots. You've got Israelites doing all this rap, Hebrews and Hellcats and all that. And over at ISUPK, they have that black militant Black Panther image unto them, wearing all black, doing military drills, wearing the boots. And also one of their members said, the Lord is the nigga God. And when you think of nigga, you think of black culture. So a lot of them are bought and paid for and are going to be used to say what? Look, these Hebrew Israelites, these black Hebrew Israelites are black identity extremists. They're nationalists, black nationalists. They're gang members. You see, everything that these YNs are doing, they push the same thing. So we got to round them up as well and take, their message off the internet and take them off the highways and byways. But as it says in verse 22, but Yahweh is my defense, and my power is the rock of my refuge. and he shall bring upon them their own iniquity, and shall cut them off in their own wickedness. Yeah, Yahweh our power shall cut them off. So this very same trap you're setting for the Israelites, and you're going to get a lot of our people, but Yahweh Bahashem Yahweh Shah is going to cause you to fall in your own trap, while he's going to save the elect who are doing the right thing. You're bringing about this chaos, which is just fulfilling prophecy of you coming down in great wrath. And once you go to touch his men, that's when Yahweh is going to checkmate you. As it says in Isaiah 59, I believe, verse 19, when the enemy comes in like a flood, then will that standard be set up. Great miracles and salvation is about to take place unto, the righteous 1/3 of the elect in America. But as, for 2/3 of you wicked Israelites, you're going to have no hedge over you. You're going to be washed away in that flood. But now I'm going to go to Revelation 12, verse 10. And I heard a loud voice saying in heaven, now is come our salvation, and the strength, and the kingdom of our power, and the power of his Hamashiach. For the accuser of our brethren is cast down, who accused them before our power day and night. Again, Esau, Edom, who he's building up that accusation right now. As we read in that Fox News article, so-called black fatherlessness is leading into the gang problem. These immigrants are grapists and thugs and gang members. Oh, those Israelites, they're black Hebrew Israelites, they're gang members. So we're justified in bringing, this law and order against them. But as it says, he is cast down, and what? Salvation is come unto the elect. Like I read back in that Psalms 94, when the enemy, comes to set up those traps, the Lord is going to cause him to fall into his own traps. But with all that being said, while we get on Esau, we don't let you 2/3 off the hook either. You've got the prophets out here telling you what the game plan is, but still you want to indulge in this so-called black culture and fan the hand at the prophets, which is ultimately fanning the hand at Yahweh Bahashem Yahweh Shai. So, that's going to bring about that judgment on you. And, these elites understand that. That's why they're able, to do the things that they do unto you. And ultimately, why they're able to bring about this great death and destruction that they're coming with. But this is Jeremiah chapter 50. I'm going to read verses 6 to 7. My people hath been a lost sheep, because they're not paying attention to their true shepherds, the men of the Lord, the prophets, chiefly of GMS or Great Millstone, as well as the brothers coming in the spirit of GMS. Their shepherds have caused them to go astray. These black pastors in these churches, which are puppets, these celebrities, especially these rappers, which are set up and a lot of our people follow after, who intentionally lead them astray, have caused them to go astray. They have turned them away on the mountains. They have gone from mountain to hill. They have forgot their resting place. And, mountains and hills in the scriptures can represent big governments and small governments. Wherever our people dwell, amongst these heathens, they follow after their ways, trying to go along to get along. And look what happens. It leads you into a deeper and a deeper ditch, because you've forgotten your resting place. Yahweh Bahashem Yahweh Shai. Here's the main point, verse 7. All that found them have devoured them, and their adversaries said, we offend not, because they have sinned against Yahweh, the habitation of justice, even Yahweh, the hope of their fathers, the accusers of our brethren. See, Lord, we did these horrible things unto your people, but look at how wicked they are. We shouldn't be at fault for them being gangsters and whores and thugs and criminals. But then at the same time, who put, the infrastructure in place to lead to, that outcome? You Edomites. So, you're not going to be exempt either. You set up these snares and these traps and these pitfalls, and you're about to fall in them as well, just as the wicked of our people are falling into them. But now I'm going to go to 1 Thessalonians chapter 5. I'm going to start at verse 1. Because back with those articles dealing with the National Guard, what was one thing they kept saying? We're going to bring law and justice and peace and order back, to these American streets. But, hey, that's the okie doke. You got a lot of these MAGA Edomites and whatnot, looking at this as a good thing since it's Donald Trump doing it. He's bringing law and order and peace. We do need, the National Guard on the streets. We need more legislation and troops, which, when you go to like videos and articles dealing with that, you'll see a lot of people having that sentiment, but you don't know that you're being led into the fire as well. A police state is being set up right underneath your noses, and it's going to be too late before you see it. And you've got troops who you thought were there for your benefit, cracking you over the skull and putting a boot on the back of your neck and putting that hot lead in you. Hey, there have already been instances of ICE agents shooting at your so-called Northern Kingdom. So it's only going to intensify. But 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, verse 1. But of the times and of the seasons, brethren, ye have no need that I write unto you. For yourselves know perfectly that the day of the Lord so cometh as a thief in the night, when you least expect it. Verse 3, for when they shall say peace and safety, bringing peace and law and order back to the streets of America due to this crime and lawlessness, then shall sudden destruction come upon them, as travail upon a woman with child, and they shall not escape. That's when the rug pull's going to happen. And you're going to find out that it was too late for you to do anything. And the main target is going to be, you Israelites. It's called Jacob's trouble for a reason. But this is Ezekiel chapter 21, start at verse 9. Son of man, prophesy and say, thus saith Yahweh, say a sword is sharpened and also furbished. It is sharpened to make a sore slaughter. It is furbished that it may glitter. Should we then make mirth? It contemneth the rod of my son as every tree. And he hath given it to be furbished, that it may be handled. The sword is furbished, the sword is sharpened, and it is furbished to give it into the hand of the slayer. And as I quoted earlier with Psalm 17, verse 13, the wicked, you Edomites, are the sword of the Lord. So the slayer getting this sharpened and furbished and glittering sword is Esau Edom. To do what? Cry and howl, son of man, for it shall be upon my people, you Israelites, and it shall be upon all the princes of Israel. Terrors by reason of the sword shall be upon my people. Smite therefore upon thy thigh. So that's it with this video. With this video, I hope you sincere, Akim and Akwath were edified. Just keep strong. We are almost out of this final wicked captivity of the heathen nations, chiefly of the Edomites. And as always, I'm going to say Abad Babal, Kwam Yasharallah, and until next time, Shalom.